Awesome. Thanks, Kate. All right. Well, we got a jam-packed 90 minutes. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started, and then as people jump in, we'll handle that. I'm gonna drop a link in the chat. Now, what that's gonna do is it's gonna give you a new um, it'll give you a new link to the board. So it'll create a new board for you. So you can follow along with me. And if you have your own stuff you'd like to work on, feel free to do that. All right. And so if uh, in in some of my previous sessions, or if you take my training, what I do is I help people work through an AI role plan, and this is what that looks like. So what I do in these role plans, and you'll see in the next slide, is that we go and we break down these deliverables into tasks. So we're going to be working on this deliverable right here, story mapping, right? So this is a role plan for AI product or for product managers. This is their AI role plan. The idea is that you would go through and work up as much automation as you can for each of these deliverables. We can also build this KPI based. So what we're going to work on today is story mapping, and we're going to take it from the beginning to the end. So I'm going to explain it to you. So for story mapping, and I actually use AI to help break this down, right? So it breaks down into multiple steps. So these are the steps that we're actually going to go through today. We're gonna come in and we're gonna give it a problem, and I start off with a problem again. If you're following along and you want to work on a problem that you have that you're currently thinking about doing, then go ahead and do that. And I'm going to be switching between ChatGPT and Lucid Charts. And am I sharing my screen? Do you see my screen, everybody?
Yes.
Yes, we
Okay,
do.
cool.
Yeah.
All right. I didn't see my little green bar, so it freaked me out for a minute. Okay, thank you, Kate. Like I haven't done it before. And so we're going to go through each of these steps, right? And the cool thing is we're going to follow this path. So we're going to start off and we're going to actually create our problem statement. And then for the identify the scenarios, in order to do that, we need a decent epic. And so I'm going to walk through. Now our epic is going to be bare bones. If you know how to create GPTs, or if you've done some automation with your LLMs, either ChatGPT, Claude, or one of the others, you can create automations that can walk you through, building out your epics, and it's a huge time saver. So then we're going to use ChatGPT to then help us break down our user stories. Then we're going to show how we can, how you would sequence them, and then work through basically. I'm going to skip over while we're going to identify the user stories. I'm not going to go into a breakout room or the personas and then go through each persona like you may normally do. Again, we'll get a pretty good idea based on the scenario and the user stories, how we would do the story mapping from there. And it's something we can go back to later, right? Now we're going to prioritize the tasks, and then we're going to create our visualization and convert these things into Jira cards. So it's going to be pretty cool. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start off with this problem statement, and then in this board, I'm going to open up ChatGPT, and this is a custom GPT, and I'm going to run it next to. I'll explain this in a minute. Let me set up the board here a minute. So I'm going to try to make this as easy as possible because we're going to be moving between the two. Okay, just that's always a fun part. And then when I do it, the zoom bar always hides the top, so that's fun too. Okay, so over here in this GPT, this is going to help us work through our problem statement, right? And so I already identified, so I'm going to click the button that says let's get started. I already identified the problem that I want to work on, okay? So we're going to, let me make this a little bit bigger. So the problem is that I was doing some consulting for an educational research company. They have 500 employees and they offer research materials to schools and teachers through their website. And one of the problems they're running into is that their tech support, their support is inundated with calls because there's a lot of technical documentation and they're not exactly people when they come in to search, they're doing keyword searches, but it, you know how that is. If you don't understand the technology, you're coming in with the keywords and you're having a problem finding things. So what ends up happening is they get a lot of phone calls to support. So the idea was is they wanted to cut this down, right? So let's work through the problem statement without like we have some ideas on what might solve the problem, but let's work through our five whys and develop our problem statement and see how we can start to work towards what the solution would look like.
Okay, Marty, can we just check everyone got in? I saw someone had trouble getting in, but the questions disappeared, so I think they may have got in. So if anyone is having trouble getting into the Lucid board, and Marty, a couple of new people have joined, so you may need to reshare the link. There we go. So if
Okay.
anyone's having trouble getting into the Lucid board, let us know, but you shouldn't need to log in. The link that Marty shared should take you straight in.
Okay. Thank
No,
you.
I think we're good, Marty. Okay.
All right, cool. All right. And so now what it did, what this, again, if you understand or if you haven't built these custom GPTs, in my training, I show you how to do this. So what it'll do is instead of just dumping out and giving you the five question whys, it's going to work through one at a time, right? So, why do customers? So I'm going to copy and paste the first why into Lucid into my chart, and so basically now at this point, if you have your team in here, you can go through and ask these questions, right? So why do customers contact support for clarification for relevant material? So one of the reasons is it's hard to find the information I need with keywords, right? So that kind of makes sense. And then another is, I don't understand um, how the research relates to my problem. So, you could see how this could be, you could see how this could be the kind of things that would happen to a user, right? If it's keyword search, very technical documentation. And then the nice thing about Lucid is, I don't know why I can't move this thing. Come on, go away. All right. So the thing I like about Lucid, if you haven't used this before, is you can lasso these cards and then you go up here and you do collaborate with AI and then click summarize. So I know we've all done this before, right? We're going through a five whys or whatever, and you have 8 stickies. And so the nice thing is that this will come and it'll create a nice summarization for you. And so now I can just take that summarization, difficulties and understanding. So it combined all of the stickies for me, right? So then I'm going to go back over here. I'm going back to the left in Chat GPT, and I'm going to answer the first why, right? And so now it comes back, and what it's going to do is it's going to take the answer of for the first why and then regenerate the second why. So it's going to come up with a why. And so now what's happening is the five whys are in context. So it's kind of cool, right? So I'm going to copy this one in, and then we're going to go to the next why, and we're going to drop it in. Nice thing about this too is that it's now keeping the documentation as to how I got through this. So why do customers have difficulties understanding the relevance of the research to a problem they're finding? Uh, relevant. I can't read out loud and think about what I'm reading, so it's kind of fun. Why do customers have difficulty in understanding the relevance of the search? They, many technical documents come back and come back. And another thing is that they aren't sure how to synthesize the results, right? And so again, we can, again, you'd have your team on the board and they'd be doing this. And so again, we can summarize this and summary come down here. There are difficulties of sizing the board, so I can, cut and paste these. Just going to take that. Looks like it's giving me a heading. And so I'm going to continue to work through these 5 whys. So here's my third why. Why are the customers having difficulty? Synthesizing search results and dealing with the technical documents. So the user doesn't know how to ask based on keywords, right? So this kind of makes sense, right? So we continue through this process. I'm going to just go through here to speed this up. I mean, I think we've all been through 5 whys, but the idea is that it's going to work through and we're going to get to our next why. And the nice thing about this is that ChatGPT will give you some hints as to what things, right? So, like usual, when you're working with your team, the way I look at it is that we don't want to work with a blank screen, right? We want to come in, give them some information, and kind of give people some hints and things for how do they actually go get the information. So, is it because they lack familiarity with the system, search interface doesn't guide them effectively, or they're unsure how to translate the needs, right? So a lot of this is, they're unsure how to align it with their problem, right? So if they can't align it with their problem, they obviously don't really kind of understand it. So that's why they're coming to us for the research, right? So again, this would make sense. Not sure how to align a problem. So why are they unsure? Let's go through this. Research materials, common tools, prompts. Let's just say they just want to ask a question, right? So this is why they call it support. They just want to ask and say, hey, this is my problem. So they just want to tell us their problem. And we find and bring back relevant information, right? That makes sense, right? So they just want to ask us for what they want. Like this is exactly why this is the reason they call support, right? Because they don't know how to find things, so they're going to go through and try to figure it out. So great. So it's going to come by and we're going to get to the first the root problem. And so what we're going to do is we're going to copy and paste the root cause and just save that here, right? So the current system requires the user to search using keywords and manually synthesize technical documents, but users prefer to describe their problem naturally and have the system return relevant, easy to understand information, right? So that's cool. So here's a list of the potential user groups. I'm not going to save these off yet. But what we're going to do is we're going to go next and go through a yellow, have the uh, have the GPT walk us through a yellow hat exercise, right? And so here's a list of potential users. We're going to capture that later. So let me know if these are the groups are impacted. Let's just go ahead and say 5, all the above, and let it continue. And again, you guys, if you're in the card, you should have access to this GPT. And so here are the impacted personas, and we're going to carry those forward. Like I said, we identify them and kind of give you some initial information, but obviously you're going to want to go into more detail on these personas. So does that break down a line? So let's go ahead and say yes, and we're going to quantify the impact. So again, one of the things that I've seen with problem statements is that they talk about the problem and kind of hint towards uh, the benefits, but what we want is we want real numbers. And so we have a support team, and it's given us some estimates, right? It's taken a cut. And part of what will happen to you is if you use ChatGPT a lot, it might bring some information forward. Obviously, I was working on this before. So go through this and make sure this is correct. So team support costs. For team members, each costing about 75,000 a year, fully loaded. And so that's about 300,000 support call volume. We think that it's already kind of hinting towards a solution. We think that a Gen AI chatbot might cut it down by 50%. And so it's um, going through and trying to help you formulate the benefits. So just some clarifying questions. So you want to go ahead and answer these. So how many support ticket calls are currently generated a month? Let's just say 100 because I can't think 100 per month. How many customers, teachers using their website regularly? Let's say 400 per month users per month. And then let's estimate that it takes about about 10 minutes for one of these type of support calls. And then we're gonna go ahead and feed that to the GPT. And then make sure you're reading these responses. And the thing to remember whenever you're using any of your chat models like ChatGPT or whatever is that talk to it like a colleague. If you're not getting the responses that you're looking for, tell it, right? And have it redo things, right? And if you see something you don't like, you can go in and change it. And so now it says, okay, if does this meet your expectations? Let's determine the benefits of solving this problem, right? So it's like, yeah, this is good. So what we're trying to do is get to an initial set of benefits that we can then work with the team to make sure that they're the benefits that we like. It's usually pretty good about giving you a list that's pretty aligned with what you think the benefits are. But again, we want to make sure that we're using the things like ChatGPT as a facilitator for the collaboration with the team, right? And so it came out and said, these are the benefits that we see. So what I want to do is now there are certain things that we can do in Lucid, but we need to format our data, right? So this is where we can use, like I could cut and paste these out individually, but what I'm going to ask it to do is create a list, a bulleted list of the benefits of the benefit only. Aye, aye, aye. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get just like the 1, 2, 3, 4 into a single list without the extra bullet. Let's see if he cooperates with me this morning. Duh. Let's try this again. If not, I'll do the old cut and paste. Only provide the main benefit, not the sub bullets. So you see, this is how you would talk to, like you were talking to one of your coworkers, and you were working on this together. You would go down through, and you kind of work through this. All right, so that's cool. So now I got just this list of sub bullets. So again, I'm going to use some of the cool things that they have in Lucid. So I'm just going to copy and paste this. And then you can grab these stickies. And I don't know if you've used this before, but if you copy and paste a list, now the list needs to be delimited, right? Like so it needs to be new line, like I created there. So what it'll do is it'll come in and it'll create your user story for you, or I'm sorry, or your sticky notes, right? And it'll separate them out. So this is kind of cool, right? So here are the benefits. So now what I want to do is I want to take these benefits and I want to work with the team and collaborate on them, right? So I'm going to go to the next section and I forgot to copy them. Okay, so I'm going to do a copy. Then we go to the next area. And then this is these are some tools that Lucid provides. So this is a benefits prioritization. So you drop in your user stories and save the changes. And now you can, let's edit the activity and run the bad boy. Where'd that go? So what this is supposed to do, I'm going to see if that works. Okay. So what happens now is that this is kind of a cool tool. I use this one a lot. So I can go back in and now what we can do is you can see top to bottom, we can go through and say, and get the team to prioritize. And so everybody on the team would do this and then it would synthesize your results, right? Improve customer satisfaction. I kind of like that one. Operational cost savings. Enhance user experience. What's this one? Let's see. Increase efficiency by technology, but let's put the users first, right? So improve customer satisfaction, enhance user experience, kind of the same operational. So you just go through this effort and team can work together. And then what you do is um, you submit it and it comes out and it gives you a rank ordered list of prioritization, right? So that's nice, and we'll use that later. So now what we want to do is we're going to go to the next section. We're going to identify the user activities. And in order to identify the activities, we have to do some work, right? So first of all, we want to finish off here and say, okay, create, uh, formulate a problem statement. Okay, ready to go. And so now we wanted to format our problem statement. And if any of you follow Scott Selhorst, he's one of the he's one of the experts on the system. He's a product coach, and he has a format that he uses for his problem statements. And I have the GPT, and it creates it in his format. So it comes back with, the problem of the customer struggling to find relevant research materials because they cannot express their needs effectively using keywords affects teachers, school administrators, customer support, company leadership, the impact of which is 170,000 in annual cost due to support team workload, user productivity loss, alongside frustration and inefficiency for the end users. And so the benefits of solving the problem would be improved customer satisfaction, increased efficiency, teachers, administration, 150,000 in cost savings. So the nice thing about that, so we're going to go ahead and copy and paste this problem statement. And we just want to make sure we're saving it off to the board so we have access to it later. And so this is a pretty good problem statement. And what I like about it is that it clearly states the problem, and then we have actual measures. So we have things that we can measure to tell if we're reaching towards our problem, right? So that's cool. Here's a breakout room. Like I said, I'm not going to go into this, but what we would normally do here at this point is go into more detail on each of these personas. And what I did was I used Roman Pickler's got a template out here for his user personas. So just use that. And so now what we want to do is we're going to go into our our next GPT, and we're going to create an epic. So think about how much time this would take you typically, right? Is that hang on a second, just get set up a second here. So typically, just writing the problem statement. People have a tendency, what'll happen is product manager a lot of times will gather the information, go off on their own and write the problem statement, maybe go through the five whys themselves. And what this does is if you get the whole team together, what I propose is that instead of taking, 4 hours to write the problem statement and then usually epics, sometimes I've seen them take 2 weeks with people. You can't get everybody in a room, you go back and forth. So what you want to do is the whole concept of Agile is the iterative nature of it, right? So just like in DevOps, where we teach people test-driven development, you want to put your code in, you want to test it as fast as possible, right? You want this to be so easy that you do it constantly. And so this is what we want to do with getting to our story maps. The sooner we can get to a story map and identify how we want to lay out our stories and solve our problem, the sooner we can talk about timelines and when we can deliver things, right? So if we can knock this down to an easier process, obviously I say 90 minutes, probably more realistically a couple of hours, but very doable with the team in the room for this session. So instead of having multiple meetings, you get everybody together for a workshop like this, and then you go through. So what I'm going to do is the Epic Writing Assistant goes through and it wants, if you give it a problem statement, it'll help write the first pass of the epic. So it's kind of telling me what it wants. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it and tell it to use my problem statement, right? So I'm going to say, use this problem statement. Sometimes ChatGPT can be a little bit too helpful, right? So I was saying, use this problem statement. And it's going to work through and start to generate. So it's coming back and it's going to go through my primary personas again. And then again, this is a skinny down version. What I asked it to do is just identify the key scenarios, who's affected, and then to create acceptance criteria I like the Gherkin style. And I actually asked it to put in code so we can cut and paste it and we could save off another board that we could give to our delivery teams, and they could automate um, the acceptance criteria, right? So what's nice about this is that, again, how many times have we struggled to create acceptance criteria on the fly? People always want to go away and figure this out. Again, this isn't 100% complete, but it's a pretty good cut, right? And then it gives us, it's a lot easier to look at acceptance criteria or scenarios and then say, I don't like that. Let's redo that. Let's move this here. We need to break that down a little bit differently. Hey, in our system, it works like this, right? That some of those things the model isn't going to know, so you do need to feed it that. So here's the list of the scenarios, right? So this is good. So I'm going to just take this list, and we're going to want to do the same thing where, sorry about that. So in some cases, I added some useful prompts. If it doesn't come back and give you a nice list of the scenarios like this, you can use this prompt and it'll help you get to a list that's usable. So again, we're going to use our handy dandy automated sticky notes by cut and paste the right thing. And then have it generate the stickies for me, which is so cool. Like this, obviously, if you can't tell, it's my favorite thing. But let's go through it. I'm just going to clean these up a little bit. I don't want to have scenario 1, 2, and 3 in there because we're going to then prioritize these because these are going to be the scenarios across the top of our story map. Right. So the nice thing is that again, the language models have a lot of information. So you can ask it based on its own experience, how to how to prioritize these. But again, this is stuff that you probably know better than the model. And so one of the things when we're thinking about using these models and thinking about human in the loop is let it do what it's good at, and then let us do what we're good at, right? And what we're good at is how does this how does this really fit into the organization? We understand the political things that are going on. We understand how we like to work with our users. And, are there some personas that are at a higher risk than others? So do we do that work first or not? Right. So I'm going to go through the same thing. I copied these and I'm going to paste them in. This is going to be like we did before, would be a prioritization scenario with our team. Right. So sometimes the thing with these little hands is sometimes if you get your sticky outside the box, when you first cut it in, if it doesn't have a hand, you want to make sure that you get it inside of here. Otherwise, um, it doesn't, it won't see it. So save changes. Again, I'm going to start the activity and then I'm going to go through and I'm going to prioritize it. Right. And so I'm just kind of going through these. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Get to them. So customer support agent, assist users, high impact. It's high impact. Again, I'd probably cut that out, right? What I don't want to do is I don't want to lead the team into thinking that, hey, this is high impact, so I have to put it first, right? So what you want to do is just have the scenario names in here, and then we're going ahead and submit our response and then review our results. And so we're going to want to keep this list of priorities because this is the order that we're going to want to put them into our uh, user story diagram. Okay. So we're going to go back to the board and go to the next step. How's the pace? Everybody okay? I know I waited up 30 minutes before I went in here.
We're good.
Okay. Okay, so then we're going to break down the user stories. The nice thing about this is that you guys understand all these things that we're doing. So what I'm trying to show is that a flow and then how we can, combine the use of AI with Lucid. Because I think the power of the visual piece. Normally in my training, what I do is I take you through those role deliverables and we create the list of steps and so you have that visual of the workflow, but then everything else is kind of sequential in ChatGPT or Claude or whatever. And the nice thing about tying it with the Lucid boards is we have a visual way to go ahead and collaborate with the team without people having to scroll up and down through the chat. And then once we're done, you can save your chats in ChatGPT, but this way we have a board that has all of our thoughts and the other work that we did to get here. All right, so now what we want to do is the proposed epics focus on search functionality, address frustration, problem statement, user personas. And so let me know if you need anything else. So for now, we're gonna call that epic okay. One of the things I would typically do here is work on the epic a little bit, drop it onto the Lucid board and create a Jira ticket out of it. But I'm going to go through specifically how to really integrate Lucid Charts with Jira in another workshop because it's useful, but it takes a little bit of setup inside of Jira to make so that you can do things inside the Lucid cards and then upload it, and it helps align. So one of the things I want to do is direct you down to the bottom. There's some useful prompts that we can use. And so now that we have, so now what we want to do is we want to instruct the LLM. So use the information provided previously. So we've gone through, created a problem statement. We gave it, we then had it write the epic. And if you recall, in the epic, we have scenarios, we have acceptance criteria. Also in the acceptance criteria, I asked it to look for edge cases, right? So I identified a couple of edge cases. And again, we could go through this and work through these a little bit more. But I've found that once you get a good starter set, this is what the team is good at, right? You want to, and plus that you want them talking about how they want to test it and go through, because during that process is there's a lot of rich conversation it has, right? So what we don't want to do is we don't want to use AI to thwart further conversation, right? We've seen that if somebody thinks that I'm saying I could drop this into ChatGPT and come out with a perfect epic and then just tell the team to go write and code against that, then they're sadly mistaken, right? Because it'll get, like I said, it'll get us close, but we still need to go through that, the activity of talking to it and getting a shared understanding of the problem we're trying to solve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it to use all the information that we've just worked through, right? So using all the information we previously generated, generate a comprehensive list of user stories. Each user story should appear as a single bullet. I'm doing that so that I can bring it into Lucid, into a single bullet. And on the same line as the user story, I want you to identify one of the scenarios and put that in parentheses for that user story. That's going to help us later in our mapping of user stories to scenarios, right? So we want to keep that information together to help us process. And so I'm going to let it go through and come on, you can do it. And again, this is the fun thing about ChatGPT. Sometimes it decides it's tired. So let's start off being polite. Please continue. All right. So again, those are some things this happens on a fairly regular basis where it'll get, well, not fairly regular, but once in a while it gets stuck. And then depending on the model that you're using, some of them can't output the amount of information. So what you may have to do is tell it to continue. You'll get used to whichever um, uh, uh, chat model you use, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or the other. So it's going to go through and it's creating my list of user stories. And if you notice, it's tying the scenarios to it. Got the edge case, some common questions. And so one of the things I want to do is I just want to read through this. It had mentioned I wanted search result. I want to filter search results on the categories. I want to look through here because we know, like, and this is something that if you have your team on the call, which I suggest you would do, is you're going through this and we kind of know, or we're thinking that a generative AI chatbot solution might also be a good way to solve this problem. And so we at least want some user stories that talk about that, right? So go into a loop scenario, leadership, I want a dashboard, I want insights, looking through this, I don't see anything. So if this happens to you, this is another useful prompt. Basically, it's just what's the thematic prompt that you want? Like, so we know, and we even talked about it as we were building the problem statement that, hey, this is, not only do we want to clean up how we're tagging the articles and make the keyword search better, but also maybe we can add a new feature that's a GenAI chatbot, right? So what I want to do is say, I want to investigate that. So what I'm going to do is to ask it to generate user stories to add generative AI capabilities for a knowledge chatbot for all the personas to use, right? So I'm going to take it through and say, so the thing is that if what'll happen is it's going to use all of the information that it's built to date, right? So if it's already created some of these user stories, what it'll do with this new prompt is modify them slightly, possibly. Uh, but if not, it'll add new ones. So what it's doing now is it's going back through and it's creating. So you can see the first user story. As a teacher, I want the chatbot to answer open-ended questions. For example, what are the best strategies to teach algebra? And so that I can quickly assess relevant insights and research material. So what'll happen is that they want, instead of doing keyword search, they like to do a natural language search against the information. And so now what's happening is it's ChatGPT is going through and it's creating new user stories for me. And you can see there's a decent amount of user stories, right? This is not going to be a tiny, tiny project. So we're going to let it go through, and then we're going to kind of fast look at the next one. And so what you've seen is that I asked it to do something new, right? So what it did was it started here. I still have the user stories from above, right? And then it's creating new user stories. But again, you saw our super cool sticky tool from Lucid. So what we want to do is, so these are the user stories of generative AI capabilities, right? So very cool. But now I got a lot of cut and pasting to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the LLM to do all the things that I don't want to have to do, right? Like I don't want to have to cut and paste these into stickies. So this prompt, if it if it's nice to me. So now what I'm going to say is now take into consideration all the user stories that we've just created, right? So we had that section at the top, had some information we reviewed, and we asked it to add some more, right? Now that adding some more could have been like maybe the architect or senior developer is on the call and said, hey, we've been looking at this and we're thinking that we want to try Gen AI for this type of solution. And as the product owner, product manager, you're like, hey, actually, yeah, that's a great idea. I thought so too. So let's add in those user stories to get started, right? So, and in the things like generative AI, the interesting thing is that it's new to a lot of developers. So having it create its initial list of user stories is pretty helpful, right? So what I want to do now is I want to take them all together and I want to build one list so I can create um, a sticky bank of user stories. So here's a comprehensive list of user stories for a session with the relevant scenario in the parentheses. So it still remembers all the cool things that I wanted to do, and it's going through that. All right. So this is going to take a minute to generate. While it's doing that, let me get my, let's get us back to where we need to be. So for school administrators, and at first, I was a little annoyed by this. Like I was like, I was going to write another prompt to get rid of. It was categorizing it by personas because it already has a persona in there. And but the nice thing about this is that what I can do now is I can select this. So let's start here with the teachers while it's still generating, and then I can go into the sticky bank. Go to the sticky bank. And then what I can do is change the colors, right? So this is cool. So now what I can do is I can put each of my personas in a different color. Why is it doing that? Okay. Got it. Every charting tool I use, I do the same thing to myself. So I'm gonna undo this. And I'm gonna do it again. Okay, so this is this set. I'm going to change this to like a light blue. And then I'm going to go down to school administrators, swipe that, copy it, create a sticky bank. And I'm going to go into that sticky bank and well, let me change the color here. Okay, did that. Delete that one. Then go down to the customer support agent. So I know this feels like a lot of back and forth, but as you get used to it, as you get used to this process, it actually saves a ton of time, right? When the team gets used to um, facilitation like this or working with the language models, the prompting isn't an issue, right? Like if you think about, well, I'm saying it's not an issue to me, right? But what happens is you get used to using it, and so it becomes like another team member, right? Because it's not gonna, as you can see, it's not taking my job, right? So now I have, I can move in, let's go ahead and bring in the edge cases too. And let's make that kind of reddish, or salmon. Okay. So now we have a consolidated list of our user stories, right? Now I know this is difficult to read, but we can, zoom in and take a look at the stories, right? And the nice thing is, let me see, I don't think I want to do this yet. Now, the thing is, at this point, Lucid has a cool way of you can point, and I should have grabbed the other one, but this is story pointing. So you can do one of two things at this point. If as a product manager, if all you're trying to do is get an estimate, there's no reason why you couldn't t-shirt size these instead of story point them, right? Because there are a number of user stories here. This may take a while to story point. Um, so you can do that, and it's kind of cool because what you can do is you just uh, grab the point that you want to add to the story, and then let's make it bigger so you can actually see what I'm doing. So you can start to add the points to the cards, right? And depending on where you position it, it'll go through and keep track, right? So if you have 5 team members and 3 of them have a 2 and 2 of them have a 5, it'll basically go through. I don't think you're allowed to say planning poker anymore, but it'll go through that exercise for you, right? Which is pretty cool. So again, if you want to do this now, this is something that what I've seen since this takes a while, that what I've done with teams is as some of the team members, basically the ones that aren't going to be pointing, they'll take a break and give the team about half hour. It's good to time box it. Tell them to just put their initial cut and they'll get a chance to review it later after we build the story map. But again, it's up to you. It's based on the way you'd like to do your story mapping, right? And so now we're going to go through and we're going to finally get to where we've been trying to get to, right? And the nice thing is that if you're collaborating with the team, this might take a little bit longer, but we're only about an hour into the exercise. And again, the nice thing about this is I didn't have to go away and do some desk work and then come back and get the team together and then go away and then come back. So we have everybody, the cognitive load is so much better this way. The team comes in, we start talking about the problem, they're involved from the beginning and we're going through everything and we're walking through it together. So you don't have that spin up time at the beginning of each of the meetings to kind of tell everybody where you are and what you're doing. Everybody's in the collective is in the same mind space as you're going through this, right? And so it's cool and it gets you to a really good first draft, right? So now what I want to do is again, I'm going to use my GPT to help me do this, right? So given the following scenarios in priority order. So I had a list of scenarios in priority order, right? So I should have saved it off somewhere, but I can go back to it. And so what I want to do is, well, I can't just do that. I was going to cheat and grab it from ChatGPT, but we prioritize them. So what you're going to want to do is go grab the prioritization of the scenarios, and you're going to list them here as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So let's go back to those. So there's that on the board. So here's the prioritization of the scenarios. Let's review the results. And then I'm going to, okay, so that's the first one. I want to be able to copy and paste these. So that's the first one. What's number 2, number 3, and number 4? Okay, so they're in order over here. So I'm going to, oops. Come on. Oh, it's not going to let me do it. Hey. Okay, customer support agent. Ignore the man behind the curtain right now. I'm going to find a way to copy these. Customer support, teacher, leadership, school. So customer support, leadership, teacher, school. So if I had done this before, we wouldn't have to go back and do this. So what I'm going to do is this is the order we want. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these and get us back to where we were. Okay. So now I'm gonna drop these up here and then just I'm gonna copy them in one at a time, right? So here's the customer support agent assisting users. Okay, I want, yeah, sorry. And I'm going to update my prompt, right? So I want that here. And then number 2 is leadership. Aye. There we go. Then number 3, teacher. It's fun watching me cut and paste. This is a blast, right? So again, what I like about this is that we have everything here, right? And so now what I do is I build my prompts. So this is the order that I want. I'm given the following scenario in the priority order. And again, when we build in the next step, we're going to use this what do they call them, a dynamic table. And this is going to be for our story mapping. These are going to be the scenarios across the top of the story map in this order. So left to right, it'll be customer support agent, leadership analyzing search performance, teacher searching for relevant material, and then school administrator conducting research, right? And so what I wanted to do was use these scenarios as a column header in the matrix. So a column header in the matrix with the highest priority scenario as the first column and so on, right? Then I'm going to create 3 rows and I'm going to label them minimal usable product, minimal viable product, and superior capability. The nice thing about this is that you as product manager should modify this for the way and how you categorize your story maps. Like what are your swim lanes? They can be whatever you call them. I know sometimes MVP is it's a loaded term, so some people don't like to use it. But this is completely, you customize this to the way you would like it to work, to look. And then what it's going to do is it's going to create your first cut, but it's going to do it in a table, right? So it's going to create this, then it's going to create the rows, and then it's going to distribute the user stories into the appropriate row and column based on their corresponding scenario. and your understanding of product development priorities. So what I'm saying to ChatGPT is, I'm going to let you go ahead and take a first cut at prioritizing these user stories. So what do you think is the most important thing for me to do for customer support agent assisting users? Again, all it's going to do is give me a layout. It's going to give me a starting point, and we're going to start from there, right? So you can see where um, doing something like this, it takes, again, a lot of the load off of the initial um, determination of how you want this to look, right? So what I'm going to do is, so this is the dynamic table that we're going to then go build, right? So we're going to go through and we're going to take our scenarios that we have, and while ChatGPT is working, I'm going to go ahead and lay the scenarios out, right? So scenario one is customer support agent assisting users, right? Number two, leadership analyzing search performance. Leadership. Yeah. Probably should have cut and pasted. Search performance. Then scenario three, teacher searching for relevant material. Um, it'd be bad to spell things wrong since I'm working with teachers and stuff. School administrator conducting research. So I should have just done this. And here's my fourth scenario, right? Okay, so the OCD in me is but like that. Okay, so then what you can do is delete. You want to delete these columns and delete. Okay, so now we have the template of our table, and so what's happened over here to the left is ChatGPT created a matrix of the as a customer support super as a if I could read this would go much better. So it has customer support agent at the top, and I'm going to expand this out, assisting the user. Um, as a customer support agent, I want a tool that allows me to replicate the user stories, right? And so that these are our user stories from before, right? So what we want to do is, now this is a little hard to read, right? And even if we expand it out, it doesn't get much better. So some of the cool things, if we don't know this, is you can say, please um, create in Excel a downloadable Excel for the matrix, right? So we're just going to ask ChatGPT to create a table. Now, one of the things that we want to do is I want to go back up to where we had our user stories, and I'm going to copy them. I'm going to copy them down, right? So we have all of our user stories up here. Just gonna. I don't want to just move them down, right? Because there are times when you're going through this that it might get kind of hinky. Now this table is going to expand, so I'm going to drop them off over here. Now, one of the things that, again, is nice about Lucid is I can convert these to, you can convert them to a Lucid card or to Jira if you'd like, and Smartsheet. Also, if you have ADO plugged in and turned on, you would see ADO here instead. But for now, I'm just going to use the Lucid cards. And so it's going to create the Lucid cards. I'm going to lose my coloring. I did not want to click that. And then, oh, sorry. We're going to convert them to cards. And now what I wanted to do is I wanted to clean it up because so I can actually see them, right? And I'm going to have to move them. Have to move them around a little bit. So now what it's done is it's created a download for me, right? So I'm gonna have it save it here. And so you can see it's so just have changed some formatting. So you can read it, right? So all we're going to do is format the cells, the text, alignment, just want word wrap, right? So it looks like something we can use, right? So now we can expand these out and clean up the Excel file. But what this is doing is it's showing us basically where to put the user stories, right? So what I'm going to do at first, because this is a little, so let's drop this down. It's I think there's a way, and I have to research this. I was talking to the Lucid guys. There may be a way to just go through and tag these, and then it'll automatically go into the smart table. But what I've done is what I typically do is it's like here you can see it says edge case, um, uh, handling the things. Let's wait. Let's leave the edge cases for the end. So scenario, school administrator, right? What I typically do is I just drop them in um, to the boxes, and then I go back and do the prioritization, right? So scenario 2, school administrator conducting research. Conducting research, you can drop it in, it'll give you the space. If you want to square these up a little bit, you can do that. If you know how to do things without creating all kinds of extra work for yourself, there you go. Clean it up. But so now this is kind of this effort of copying these over. Let's just move the edge cases into here. School scenario, the administrator again, right? So the administrator stuff. And then I'm just gonna keep doing this, right? So what's this one? School administrator conducting research. And I'm not going to go through the full prioritization, but we have a lot of these. They're grouped together, so it's pretty easy to do. Okay, so the idea is that I'm not going to make you guys sit through this while I do it, but the idea is that you would go in and you would move these into the appropriate area. You can use this Excel spreadsheet to then, determine, where these go in your map, right? So if you see this, what ends up happening is that now I have um, a smart table that is becoming my story map, right? So now what I can do is I can continue to move these in. And then once everything's in the right area, we can work with the team, determine, are these in the right spot? Does this look good? Do we need to add other cards? And what are the things to do? Now, some of the other cool things that you can do is, again, this kind of goes into some of the setup that you'd want to do for put it into your Jira system or whatever, but you can tag these and Ministry of the Interior. Okay. So I create a tag of MUP, right? And so what is this? Edit tags. Okay. I don't know why it's doing that. But all right, let's say this is an MVP. You can do that, and you can add it to the thing, so it'll color code it. And then the nice thing is that if you attach these tags to um, the columns, then as you move it around columns, it'll change it. And so now what you can do, the cool thing is, again, you can see that as we move these cards in, again, I'm going to move them in kind of willy-nilly, but obviously you would take a little bit more care. And the nice thing is to use the spreadsheet, and it gives you a pretty good first cut as to where things should go. But now that you have them in the basically your story map, you can do story mapping just like you would normally do, right, with the team. You would go through and you would talk about the stories. Is this the right place? Do we need to add stories? I wouldn't go through the task of splitting things right now. Obviously, we're just trying to get a ballpark. You can then either create a timeline, but the other cool thing here is that you can do this, which is you can now convert the card to a Jira card. And I don't have my system set up, but you'd be able to tell it the project, and then the type of card that it is. These are user stories, and say convert, and then it goes through and converts the cards for you. Right. Let's take a minute. Which cards did it convert? Where'd they go? Wasn't it converted of it? All right, let's just do one card. But telling you this works pretty cool. Okay, you can add a description. Very cool. And then convert the card. Oh, that's fun, right? Okay, let's go. Let's bring the front. I noticed this happens every once in a while. I'm not sure. I'll have to figure that out. But yeah, the cards are there. Just send them to the back for some reason. But anyhow, you can see how this card looks different, and it, you know, you can select the signee if you have your team members in here. And the nice thing about this is this does a sync with Jira. So any changes you make here, it'll sync it up with Jira. And so that's very cool, right? So as you move these things around, if you set up the tagging and you set up Jira the right way, what'll happen is that while you're doing your, you can either do it. I typically like to wait until I'm pretty comfortable with the way things are laid out on the story map, and then I convert them to Jira cards, so it's not this constant sync back and forth. But the nice thing is if you're doing this and then you decide that this needs to move down into an MVP, not the MUP, is that it'll update the Jira card if you put the tag in here. Again, I'm going to go through. There are a lot of cool things for using the Jira cards, and then to create roadmaps. So I'm gonna build another workshop that does that specifically. But this is pretty cool, right? So without all the explanations and me saying right at the end of every sentence, then this is a pretty quick way to go through a road mapping session, right? So what would end up happening is somebody comes to you and says, hey, we have this problem, and all of our users are having a hard time getting to our users are having a hard time understanding our documentation. So, what do you think we should do, and how fast can we solve the problem, right? This happens all the time, right? We're at work, where somebody will message us on Teams or whatever, and they want an answer right away, right? Because they're getting ready to go into a meeting, and what have we done in the past? We've either kind of guessed, which is a problem. Over time, the more we've worked with agile teams, we've realized that that really puts us all in a bad spot. So we're more used to saying, "Hey, let me go check with the team." But then, the team's working on things, and this elapsed time of creating a good um, problem statement and a good epic with good acceptance criteria takes time. So if we can shrink that time so we can iterate through these story maps quickly, like in a 90-minute session, right? So imagine instead of going and trying to gather a team members together, whether they're developers, QA, the product owners, business analysts, to try to align everything. Think about being able to just call a 90-minute meeting and go through the process from beginning to end with everybody on the call, right? So they're hearing the problem statement, they're working through the problem statement. Then they go to the next step where they're helping you generate the epic, right? So now you get rid of, or at least cut down on, the cycles of reviews. And again, I've seen epics take 2, 3 weeks to get done because of people's schedules, going through reviews and drafts, and then people having to remember what they're working on and going through that process, and then finally get to the point where you can break down user stories. Again, when we're doing story mapping, what we're trying to do is just get enough of the information so that we can estimate a plan. And then at the end of this 90 minutes, I can go back to the stakeholder and say, hey, we just worked through it with the team. We think that we can build a basic chatbot for like internal, like let's start with customer support as our pilot. So we can go and we can build that for customer support, have them test it out, and then we can start working on how do we production and make it production capable for our end users. How do we test that? And now we have a pretty good plan. 90 minutes done. We can talk to the stakeholder and decide if we want to move forward. If we want to move forward, we have a lot of the work already done, and it's all on our board. It's in Jira, and we can decide what we need to do next. Do we need to break down stories? Do we need to point? And then go through the process. Now, I know I went through a lot of stuff, right? And I know it feels complicated. So go through the board, and if you didn't notice this, and if you haven't used Lucid Charts much, if you go down underneath the arrow, there's this thing that has organizers, frames, and paths. Click on this, and then click on paths, and then click follow. And now what this will do is it'll give you this at the bottom. It'll give you this path. So now what you can do is you can go step by step through this workflow. And so a lot of the stuff that you may have missed, you can go step by step and work through it, right? These GPTs that are let me exit the path and make it really tiny so I can see stuff. And blah, 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 blah. So these GPTs that have my lovely face on them. So these GPTs are public. So if you click on the link, you should be able to get to the GPT. The problem statement one is pretty good, and it's pretty standard. Again, if you want to modify it, again, I have training classes that teach how to create these, how to create the automations. So feel free to reach out to me, or I think I had to in the last part of the path, do this. If I know a good way to move through this one at a time, I would do that instead of what I'm getting ready to do now. But anyway, so get to the end here. But you can snap this QR code if I can find it again. There we go. So if you click the QR code, it'll link into my calendar if you want to actually book time and just walk through this. The training site is a little bit weak. It doesn't describe this well enough. But what I do in the training for different roles is we go through and we build out a role plan. So it's 64 deliverables, or you can pick KPIs. And then, for example, this is the type of thing that we would do for each one of those deliverables. So what we did was we walked through, or we built a workflow that included AI and human intervention and collaboration with Lucid Charts by starting with what is our deliverable? We want to get to story mapping. So in order to get to story mapping, these are the steps in how we can leverage ChatGPT or some other LLM to get you through that. So contact me. You can go to the training site, sign up for training, reach out to me on LinkedIn, find me on the Agile Network, or go ahead and book some time. But so any questions, or are we out of time? I think I've got a couple minutes. If there are specific questions, don't feel obligated. I will call on you.
Marty, I had a quick question. For some reason, the board that you shared with us has not updated. So I'm just wondering if you need to hit refresh or anything at your end, because we got to define the problem, but it may just be at my end. But when we got down to break down user stories and putting them in sequence, the version of the Lucid board I'm on doesn't have all of that fancy smancy stuff.
Well, that's no funsy onesie. Let's see. There's a way, I think. Do I have to republish the board? Let me do this. Okay,
And that's fine. It was
no.
just in case anyone else was wanting to access it to see exactly what happened, maybe afterwards, because I'm assuming the link would still be live on our machines.
It should be.
Okay.
The Lucid guy showed me this cool way to have it so it copies the board instead
Mm,
of pointing to the same board. So that way, if I go and mess with it, so let's
okay.
it might be the same link, but can you try that? And if
Okay.
not, what I'll do is I'll check with who was I talking to? Was it Cal? Preston? If you
Okay.
don't
Let's
mind clicking on that and tell me if
yeah.
that's better.
It's loading now. Awesome. That's it. Got everything.
Oh, all right, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, looks like people are dropping off. If there are, I'll hang out for a couple minutes if there are any questions. But it looks like people are dropping out. But I appreciate you
Okay.
guys hanging out. I know this is a crazy 90 minutes, but thank you. This was fun. And
Thank you
thank you,
very
Kate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Marty. So again, as Marty said, you can reach out using the QR code to connect with him. You can also connect with him on Ask the Expert by the Agile Network. So thank you for joining us today. I am going to stop the recording.
Uh,